Greetings and welcome to the Transforming Assessment series. On behalf of Jeffrey Crisp, I'm Matthew Hillier. Jeff can't be with us today, but he will be listening in at some point in the future. Our presenters today are going to be Dr. Elyssebeth Leigh from the University of Technology, Sydney, and Elizabeth Rosser from the University of New South Wales, and they're going to be presenting on role-based learning. So I will now hand you over to our presenters.
Maybe in the text bar, so that we can adjust our positions and get good volume. Okay, so thank you all for coming along this afternoon. Just to let you know, we're not going to do a formal scripted presentation. We're going to talk to you about our experiences and hopefully get a conversation going between us so we can have some collective intelligence building up. Both Elyssebeth and I were part of or are still part of the Project Enroll from the ALTC, and we'll give you a web link to the resources from Enroll if you're interested in following up. There's a whole range of resources available for you there. Okay, so to help us think about assessment of online role play from a variety of perspectives, we'll engage in a little role play activity throughout it. I think that's only appropriate. What I'd like you to do is have a look on the screen and choose one of the stakeholder roles that is represented on that lovely little wordle there. Try not to go for the role that you are currently operating in. Try to pick one of the other roles, say a professional association or an alumni of the university. Perhaps you want to be the chancellor or the PVC. So just pick one of those roles, and what we're going to ask you to do is to think about the issues and methods that we talk about throughout this presentation from the perspective of that person. So has everyone chosen a role? Hands up. Frederick, you have a question?
Click on talk, Frederick.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. I clicked on the hand as a hands up. I do apologise.
Oh, no problem.
And rather than the tick. Okay, fantastic.
Right.
So, Frederick, do you have a role? Yes. Greg?
Matthew, you can take one. Well, or no, you've taken one. Okay.
Okay, what we hope, in a formal role play, we would have techniques for ensuring that these roles are allocated so that each role is represented and that the stakeholders would be classified so that you get a representation across the different types of roles. But for this little activity, all we're going to ask you to do is, on at least 3 occasions during this webinar, reflect on the content of the presentation and type into the chat frame some evaluative comments about assessment of online role play from the point of view of the stakeholder you've chosen. So we're going to roll through a whole range of things about what is online role play very briefly, what we might assess, why you might play, and then we'll go into the specifics of methods of assessment that have been tried and tested in the field of online role play. So your job is just 3 times during this presentation to make an evaluative comment about any of the things that you hear from the point of view of the role you have chosen. Okay, so before we go any further, are there any questions around that?
Paul was asking, do you need to know which role we chose?
Yes, very good, Paul, for prompting that. When you type into the chat box, if you could preface it by saying which role you've chosen. So if you've chosen first-year student, you might put 1 year or first year, and then your comment. For example, you might say, that's really unfair, or that sucks because that's going to take far too long, or that if you were a parent, you might say, you know, you're not giving enough homework. It's really thinking about the content of what is being presented from the role that you are. So just before you type in, write down which role it is that you're representing. Any other questions?
No? Okay.
All right, so keeping your roles in mind, we're now going to just move on to make sure that we all know that we're talking about the same thing. We'll look at what is the role definition of online role play in an educational context. So I'll hand over to Elyssebeth Leigh for this.
Okay. I started working with role play well before computers had moved into anything remotely like the internet. So for me at the beginning, the first role plays that I saw were of the kind of, you're the manager and you've got a problem with this staff member of type X, and you're the staff member, you've got a problem with this manager of type Y. Now you have to sit down in front of the rest of the group and have a conversation about this using the techniques we've spent the morning talking about with regard to conflict management or so on, and see if you can resolve it. I confess that I found those kind of role plays very uncomfortable and didn't use them much. However, I did move into using role-based simulations, which are larger scale activities where individuals take on the role, say, for example, you're the ambulance driver, you're the patient, you're the nurse at reception, you're the parent, etc. Now work a whole lot of things out. Here's the problem. It's those kinds of ones that have been moving into online role play. That is where there's an authentic context of some sort. Clearly, by authentic is meant a representation of an authentic context. You're not really the ambulance driver, but it's what I think of as an as if context. So it's as close as real, but always with less than the full reality. The second thing with online role plays is that there are tasks that have a degree of meaning to them in a number of ways. That is, they are meaningful to the students moving into them. They have to understand and make meaning of the task that their stakeholder is being given. The tasks are therefore meaningful within the context that the role play is set in, and the learning that is likely to come out of it will have meaning within some future workplace or learning or career activities that the participants are going to be engaged in. The next thing we've got there is that there's in-role human interaction. That is, we talk to each other as if we were the stakeholders that we have selected while we are working in the online environment.